I always recommend that people keep 30 days of their data staged locally on disk. Okay, now that's VTL these days. You know, the fact of the matter was that VTLs have gone through a lot of evolution. In generation 1, what was a VTL? It was basically a place where we stacked tape images before writing them to a tape. Why? Because tape cartridges cost a lot of money in the early days, or tape reels cost a lot of money, and mainframes used them very poorly. They wrote little tiny sets of blocks onto one tape, and then you pull that tape and you have to mount another one. It was a real buzz hassle, right? So what they did was they created stacker technology. They designated a bit of DASD, a bit of disk, as a virtual tape library. And they stacked up all the tape drives until they had the full amount of data that was required to fill one whole tape. And then they wrote the tape. Okay? That was the first use of a VTL. Second use came out about 20 years ago, as I recall, where they said, okay, you can't afford to have a library that has 10 drives in it, so how about you only have one drive, but we emulate 10 drives. We virtualize 10 drives. Okay, we create virtual drives, we receive the data through these multiple virtual drives, we write it to the disk, and then we slowly push it off the back end of the disk repository into the tape. That was a way to spoof, to make it look like you had more gear than you actually had. That was your second generation VTL. Today a VTL is whatever a vendor says it is. Usually all it is a bunch of tape that you designate as a disk target for a backup software, and then oftentimes they sweeten the deal by throwing some software on it that's called deduplication. You know, deduplication, they sell it to you with the Aladdin sale. Phenomenal cosmic power, itty bitty living space. Get a 70-to-1 reduction ratio with our box. Doesn't that sound good? Wow. $3,600 worth of SATA hard drives for $410,000. Works for me. Okay. VTLs deliver fast restore. Let's get through what I think they do very well. You know, basically, if I can do a software-based VTL where I can use any hardware that I've got and I just do the VTL in software, I can do this with ArcServe from CA, and then I still make a backup of the contents of that virtual tape library to tape, to physical tape. That's good. I keep 30 days of backups right there. Why? Because the preponderance of data interruption events are going to be the accidental deletion of an individual file at the wrong time. You know, somebody accidentally pushes the delete key and they didn't mean to. Okay? If I can restore an individual file from a disk, it's going to take me a hell of a lot less time than trying to load a bank of tapes, go through all the tapes, reload their contents, and then find the individual file on a tape backup somewhere. That takes too long for that kind of minor crisis. And the only thing that separates a crisis from becoming a full-blown disaster is time. Regardless of what Mick Jagger says, time is not on your side, okay? Now, you go to a hardware-based VTL, now you run into the same problems that I identified earlier about WAN-based replication across rigs, where all the rigs have the same bezel plate. You got to buy them all from the same vendor. You got to only talk to a rig that's identical to the rig you've got. That's a hardware lock-in. It's going to cost you a ton of money, and you're still better served by just doing a backstore onto tape anyway. Now, deduplication has just recently been added the last couple of years. Basically, the idea is if you're taking a 1 terabyte backup every night, at the end of the week, you'd have 7 terabytes, and you'd have to commit a lot of storage to that, right? Well, what if dedupe would only record and only add to the backup set the data that's changed? It's what we used to call incremental backups. And it would collapse all those files down. Now it's 1.47 terabytes of data for 7 days of backup. That kind of makes sense. Okay, I kind of like that idea. Okay, I still want to do it in software. You know, it's a post-process operation. It's not something I got to worry about, you know, putting on my operations servers. I can do it after I write the backup and then do the dedupe. Some people want to do it in line, and they're going to charge you an awful lot of money for it on dedicated hardware. And I'm still going to make a tape backup of uncompressed data anyway because I don't trust those disk drives either. But the point is that you keep 30 days, you can keep them, whether it's software dedupe or hardware dedupe, you can keep them close, and you can resolve that individual file restore problem in an expeditious way. That'll solve an awful lot of the problems you've got.